Hi everyone, this is the last time I'm going to get to see you guys before you actually start on your novels. So I hope you're excited. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is how you actually get started. So there are four main ways that you can begin your novel. We're going to talk about all four of them. The first one is describing your characters and or your setting, right? So this is basically starting with your exposition, starting with the description of where and when your story takes place. What does it look like? Who are your characters, especially your central characters? The second one is to start with your inciting incident. Remember that your inciting incident is the moment that starts off the whole story, that really introduces the conflict. The third way is in medias res, which again we will talk about. That's Latin. And the fourth way is to start actually at the end of the story. And again, we will talk about how that's going to play out in a little bit. So the first type of beginning we're going to talk about is when you describe your setting or your characters in the start. Again, this is your exposition, right? This is going to really orient your reader in your world and in your setting, get them comfortable before you jump into the rising action and the climax and you hit them with the inciting incident. It sort of helps to ease readers into your story. Okay? If you choose this type of beginning, you're going to want to make sure that you introduce your central characters or a central character's goals and motivations, whether you choose to start with your protagonist or your antagonist, right? Remember that both of those are central characters. The second thing you're going to want to make sure that you do is describe a setting that develops the mood or reinforces a character in your story. And that's actually going to be the next video that you guys watch in this module, is going to talk about how to create and develop those settings. Here's an example of a beginning that starts with the exposition, that starts with that description of setting and or characters. Leaving was all Marissa could think about. Fallbrook would drive any teenage girl crazy. It was the kind of place where nothing ever really happened, and certainly nothing ever changed. So here's what your reader is going to learn before they have to become involved in the conflict in your whole story. They know that Fallbrook is a quiet and calm place. They know Marissa, the central character, is a teenage girl. We also know her goal and her motivation. Her goal is to leave Fallbrook, and her motivation is to find excitement. The next way you might start your novel is with the inciting incident. So again, remember, this is the moment that changes your protagonist's life, really pushes them into their adventure. It also introduces your main conflict. You need to leave your reader wondering what's going to happen next, okay? So again, you're going to, in this type of beginning, you introduce your main conflict, and you want to make sure that you're creating suspense. So something should be left unknown. So let's, again, look at an example, this time of an inciting incident beginning. When she woke up later that afternoon with a splitting headache, Marissa could only remember two things. One, someone dressed in an unfamiliar uniform had broken into her home. And two, that person had not been alone. So this leaves your reader wondering, right? There's some unknown things here. We're left wondering, what was that uniform, right? Was it a hospital nurse? Was it a construction uniform? Was it an electrician uniform? We're wondering why they broke into Marissa's home. And we're also wondering who the other person was who broke in with the first one. That's really the main thing we're left wondering, because that's the end of the beginning. The third main way to begin your novel is in medias res. That's Latin, and it means in the middle of things. So in this sort of a beginning, you're actually starting right in the middle of the action. Obviously, you're going to have to go back and fill some things in later, like who your characters are, how they ended up in that situation, but you really want to start in the middle of it, in the thick of it. So have some tension right from the get-go, have an argument, have a conflict right from the start. This is really common in mystery and action novels. When you are thinking about writing this beginning, if you are thinking about writing a beginning like this, the place to look for where you might want to start are scenes from your rising action and your climax. So go back to that plot diagram that we did before and look to see if any of those scenes that you spelled out in that plot diagram might be good to start with, might really hook your reader. Here's our example of in medias res. Marissa stood face to face with General Fernandez, his fists clenched at his sides and an unforgiving look on his face. Marissa wished she were back home. Unfortunately, there was no home for her to return to. So again, this leaves us wondering some things, right? As the reader, why is there no home for her to return to? What did Marissa do to make the general so angry? And what is the general going to do now that he is so angry? The fourth and final way we're going to talk about that you guys can begin your novels is to actually start at the end of your plot. This is really difficult to do without spoiling the story so much that your reader doesn't feel like they need to read it anymore. So you need to be careful to leave just enough mystery there that it leaves your reader wondering, how did we get to this point? To start with this type of a beginning, you want to make sure that you look at your resolution and start there, right? You're moving your resolution to the beginning. Once you've done that, you can either work backwards to reveal how the ending came about, or you can jump straight to an earlier point in the novel and continue on from there. So maybe you want to include a flashback of some sort. So here's our example of starting at the end. Though Marissa's home would never be the same after the war, she was glad to finally be back in Fallbrook. The burnt homes and storefronts, though barely recognizable, symbolized the end of one era and the beginning of the next. So again, this leaves your reader wondering, right? There's still a little bit of suspense there. It's still hooking your reader. We're left wondering, what was that first era she's talking about? What did it used to be like? We're wondering, what is the new one like, right? What has changed? And she mentions a war, so we want to know, what was her role in that war? Did she actually participate or influence it? Was she just affected? Did she help people during it? We want to know what her part was in that war.